Israeli historian, Israel's wars could lead to its downfall. By Chuck Baldwin. November 7, 2024. This column is being written before the voting in Tuesday's national election has concluded, so obviously I have no knowledge of the election's outcome, but I expect a clean sweep for Trump and the GOP. When it comes to the subject of Israel, however, it matters little who is elected president, except I expect the Trump administration would be far more hawkish in the Middle East than Harris. But Harris would be more hawkish in Ukraine. So, there you go. Wars must go on, regardless of who wins the White House. The U.S. proxy wars in both Ukraine and Israel are going very, very badly. Ukraine will fall within weeks. The U.S. has lost another war, and Israel's wars in the Middle East are likewise failing. When Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu began his genocidal war in Gaza, he said his goals were to 1. Defeat Hamas in Gaza, 2. Defeat Hezbollah in Lebanon, 3. Bring the displaced Israelis in northern Israel back to their homes, 4. Return the Israeli hostages. He has achieved none of his objectives. In fact, all 4 efforts have proven to be catastrophic failures. Hamas is not defeated, far from it. Due to Netanyahu's genocidal madness, Hamas is stronger than ever. The IOF, Israel Occupation Forces, cannot even secure the neighborhoods and communities that they have already destroyed. Within a couple of weeks following Israel's carpet-bombing destruction of these areas, Hamas fighters returned stronger than before. And you can understand why. The slaughter of 200,000 plus innocent Palestinian men, women, children and babies, not 40,000 as everyone is being told, has done nothing to rid Gaza of Hamas, not even the killing of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. And make note of this, unlike Netanyahu, who fights his battles from the safety of an underground bunker, Sinwar was killed on the streets of Gaza with an AK-47 in his hands leading his men. For Palestinians and Arabs everywhere, Sinwar died a heroic death. His death is inspiring thousands of men to join Hamas in his honor. Additionally, there is no one in Gaza who has not lost either a family member or their entire family. Israel has succeeded in turning a mostly peaceful, passive agrarian people into a generation of enraged enemies strongly salivating for revenge. The ranks of Hamas are swelling exponentially and will continue to do so for many years to come. Israel has created a monster that it is not able to contain. Plus, classified documents have just been leaked this week by one of Netanyahu's closest aides documenting that it was Netanyahu himself who stonewalled ceasefire agreements and refused to negotiate for the release of Israelis held captive by Hamas. These leaks led to Netanyahu's attempt to deflect incrimination against himself by dismissing Israeli Defense Secretary Yoav Gallant. This move is very risky and could potentially kindle a military coup against the prime minister, as Gallant is very popular among Israel's military forces, especially its generals. In addition, northern Israel is more dangerous for the Israeli people than ever before. Lebanon's Hezbollah has not been weakened in the slightest. Israel's assassination of Hussein Nasrallah has only solidified and strengthened the resolve of Hezbollah fighters to enact justice upon Israel for Nasrallah's martyrdom. Furthermore, Israel's attempted ground assault into southern Lebanon has been a disaster for Israel. They have penetrated no more than a couple miles into Lebanese territory and have taken massive numbers of casualties. Plus, the Israeli forces being decimated in Lebanon are the most elite troops in Israel's military. Hezbollah has an almost inexhaustible supply of missiles, which continue to rain down on Haifa and northern Israel in an ever-increasing volume. Displaced Israelis from northern Israel are never going home. Desperate for victory, Netanyahu decided to try and deliver a fatal blow to Iran with massive airstrikes. 3 waves of jets were supposed to pulverize Iran into complete submission. But this, too, was a major defeat for Israel. The first wave of the attacks was supposed to take out Iran's radars and knock out its air defenses. But that first wave was forced to turn around, as they could not get close enough to deliver the missiles to their intended targets, because they discovered that the radar and defense technology that Iran has is superior to anything that Israel has. Had the pilots not turned their planes around, they would have all been shot out of the sky. The result was that the second and third waves never took off. Another major defeat for Israel. Israel's failing wars are making it obvious that it cannot defeat any of its enemies. Furthermore, The surprise success of Iran's defensive capabilities against Israel's air attack makes it extremely probable that neither would the United States be able to successfully penetrate Iran's air defenses, short of using nuclear weapons, as Israel possesses the most sophisticated, technologically advanced weapons systems in the Western world. Israel's military impotence is making it more and more difficult for Israelis to remain in the country. Many hundreds of thousands of Israeli citizens have already fled, perhaps as many as 2 million. And the exodus has only begun. Folks, here is the bottom line. The days of U.S. military global hegemony are finished. America and its Western European allies cannot defeat Russia in Ukraine and cannot defeat the Arab states in the Middle East. I hope readers understand the significance of all of this. We have turned not just a page but a chapter in history. The world will never be the same. What is happening militarily in Israel and Ukraine and economically with the emergence of BRICS is bringing the American empire closer and closer to its sunset. All of this is a preface to a report out of London. An Israeli historian based in Britain has said his homeland may be entering an irremediable decline as a result of its continued offensives against its neighbors following the terror attack by the Palestinian militant group Hamas a year ago. Ilan Pappé, author of the blockbuster book The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, professor at the University of Exeter, told Kyodo News in a recent interview that he sees Israelis becoming less confident in their future, while more people in the world, including even some Jews, are having second thoughts about their involvement in the Middle Eastern country amid its military campaigns. With Israel's economy and military in a weakened state, the lack of confidence among Israel's citizens has reached an unprecedented level, Pappé said, noting that young Jewish communities around the world are apparently distancing themselves from the country. The professor said one of the key tenets of Zionism, the movement for a Jewish state in Palestine, is wanting as much of Palestine as possible with as few Palestinians in it as possible. You cannot have a Jewish homeland without getting rid of the Palestinian population, and you cannot get rid of the Palestinian population without violence, he said. Israel's status quo appears so unsustainable that the so-called two-state solution, an envisioned arrangement in which it would coexist with a Palestinian state, may not be able to work. According to the scholar, there's no solution right now. There is a process of Israel getting into big troubles, maybe to the point of disintegrating as a state, Pappé said. Pappé called on the United States, a longtime advocate for Israel, to stop providing money and weapons to the country and stop protecting it in the United Nations, saying it would be better for everyone if Washington minimized its involvement. He added that the result of next month's U.S. presidential election is unlikely to change the situation surrounding Israel. Pappé was being coy. The two-state solution will probably not need to work, because it is very likely that the Zionist state of Israel will eventually collapse as a nation-state, perhaps sooner than later. This would lead to the formation of a single Palestinian state, where Muslims, Christians and Jews would live peacefully side by side, as they did for over 1,000 years before the Zionist state came into existence in 1948. The state of Israel is not a fulfillment of biblical prophecy, not in any manner, shape or form. And evangelicals will be forced to deal with this unwelcome reality in the not-too-distant future. The Zionist state was nothing but an incendiary political tumor that was injected into the Middle East to keep the neocon establishment's desire for a perpetual war alive after the end of 2 world wars, and to steal as many Middle Eastern oil reserves as possible. The neocon war establishment reached its zenith with its fabricated war on terror after the false flag attacks on 9/11. Wars against Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya and Syria ensued. All these wars were disastrous for America. Not only did the war on terror produce the ubiquitous surveillance state within the U.S., complete with the Patriot Act, the Military Commissions Act, the Department of Homeland Security, etc., it was the starting gun for America's burgeoning police state, complete with the suppression of the freedom of speech and Stalin-esque national lockdowns during the COVID experiment. But now the neocon warlust is in the process of bringing about the decline and fall of U.S. military and economic hegemony and the end of the Western unipolar world. The problem is, the Western countries, especially the United States, are living in denial and are woefully unprepared for this inevitable transition. Mainstream psyops of the post-World War era taught us that America was an exceptional nation, not due to its founding principles of individual liberty, free enterprise and limited, constitutional government, but due to its power and military might. Employing the maxim might makes right, the idea of exceptionalism morphed from being exemplary in the principles of freedom and liberty to being exempt from the rule of law and recognition of state sovereignty. But now the scales are beginning to balance. The inevitable collapse of Ukraine and Israel bespeak the inevitable collapse of the American empire. This is bad news for the neocon elite in Washington, but it is good news for America's free and independent states, not to mention the prospect of our nation's peace and prosperity. That is, if we can survive the next 4 years of whichever administration will be inaugurated in January. P.S. We are now taking pre-orders for the Freedom Documents. This is the giant compilation containing the great historical documents of our country in one volume. You cannot find this book anywhere else. The print date is November 21st, but the books always sell out quickly, as many people use them as Christmas gifts. Therefore, we give readers an opportunity to pre-order the books to ensure delivery. When the books are printed on the 21st, those who pre-ordered will be sent books first. To pre-order or learn more about the Freedom Documents, go to www.chuckbaldwinlive.com and click on the Store tab. Copyright, Chuck Baldwin. If you appreciate this column and want to help me distribute these editorial opinions to an ever-growing audience, donations may be made by credit card, check, or money order. Go to www.chuckbaldwinlive.com and click on the Donate tab. I also have many books and DVDs available for purchase online. Go to www.chuckbaldwinlive.com and click on the Store tab. To subscribe to my weekly columns, go to www.chuckbaldwinlive.com and enter your email address in the subscribe box.